qualifying session. All to play for, Nikki. We saw probably the closest free practice session we've seen throughout the year so far. So I'm imagining this is going to be a very tight qualifying session as well.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, if you look at the times during the practice session, everyone, the top 11 drivers were separated by 9/10 of a second. And I think the fact that the drivers have had so much time at this track, it was on the calendar last season, and of course they've also done pre-season testing here. So it's much more of a level playing field, I think, coming into this. We're definitely going to see the gaps getting tighter and tighter. We're now on board with Lola Lovenfoss in the Charlotte Tilbury Hot Lips Cup. What a great livery that is. But she sort of said coming into this race weekend, she's just looking for a little bit of extra performance from herself. She's currently P13 in the championship. A P8 was her best result so far.
So 174 brake horsepower behind the right foot. These little Tatus F4 derived machines with adjustment for the F1 Academy series. And drivers are going to have to use absolutely all of it over a qualifying lap.
Oh yes, they really are, that's for sure. And also a reminder that this weekend we've only had one practice session of the weekend. Previously, at some race circuits, we've had two 40-minute sessions, but this weekend, because it's a very busy schedule, we've got F1, F2 and F3 on the schedule, and of course F1 Academy. So it's a busy weekend on track. That's reduced their practice time. Also, let's remember, practice was bright and early this morning. We all set our alarms for about 5 a.m. To get out on track super early this morning, so the conditions will be completely different now that obviously we've had, well, hopefully the dust will have cleared, but a lot of rubber laid down. We can see there Carrie Schreiner in the Kick Sauber car. She actually had a really good practice session this morning, finishing in P7, a great result from her. So she'll be hopefully looking to carry on that momentum during qualifying. The best qualifying result we've seen from Carrie so far is a P11. So we're definitely room for improvement on that, and things are looking good for her.
Driver sits in 10th place in the championship on 9 points. Abby Pulley leading the series, of course, on 99 points from the driver you can see on your screen right now. Dorian Pound, 65 points. Don't let the big gaps fool you throughout the championship order. There are a lot of points on offer during these races. 2 30-minute races per weekend, paying out the full points tally. So a lot of opportunity for these drivers to make and lose points throughout this weekend. This session, critical. The first fastest lap will set the grid for race 1. The second fastest lap will set the grid for race 2. So both grids then to be decided for the F1 Academy drivers throughout this 30-minute session. Some might argue one of the more critical sessions of the weekend for them as a result of that, as we see Carrie Schreiner still making her way around the circuit, a driver who's used to GT machinery, single-seaters, prototype machinery, you name it, she's driven it. And just trying to get a lap time on the board. The only driver out there setting a flying lap at the moment, a 1:44.2 will be her early benchmark. On a racetrack, as you correctly say, Nikki, that's been rubbered in significantly from when they practiced earlier on. Bit of a difference in terms of the wind direction as well for the drivers to contend with, so a much changed racetrack.
What's the strategy here going on? You know, we can see a lot of the drivers still sitting in the pit lane. Others are going out on track now. What's the best strategy? What's the best approach?
So you're in that tyre situation here where they know the tyre's going to go away, but it is a relatively hard compound they put underneath these drivers so that they get laps in at the limit to learn the circuits and to be able to improve. Relatively young drivers throughout this series, so that's sensible stuff. They need to then decide whether they think, personally for them, running throughout the whole session, as we have seen drivers do in the earlier races of the year, is going to be better for them in terms of their improvement to get the best lap time in, or indeed if they're going to try and optimise the use of the new tyre and run a little bit later in the session to try to get the best time out of the car. When they need to decide that is before the session, because you can't put any fuel in, you've got to pick your run plan, so they will already have a strategy in mind as this session plays out.
quite a few of the drivers have actually said that this is one of their favourite tracks on the calendar. It's quite different to some of the tracks we've seen so far. Obviously, we've had tight, twisty street circuits, and we'll be going to one of those coming up as well in Singapore later in the season. I guess this allows the drivers to just really find the limits.
I think they won't mind Singapore when they get there, because for many of the drivers, that'll be the first time they've been round. And that's a pretty impressive layout by comparison. But a lot of the drivers, you've got to remember, this could be the only layout of the year, along with perhaps Zandvoort, that they've driven before. Every other circuit for certain drivers through the field, they could easily be coming to for the first time. As such, if you ask them what their favourite circuit of the year is, could be, well, that's the only one I know. So it's got to be my favourite for now. Abby Pulling certainly pulling out the sectors at this stage, looking like she's enjoying herself at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So Abby Pulling currently has 2 pole positions this season and is matched on that record with Dorian Pat, also with 2 pole positions. There is, of course, 1 point up for grabs for pole position in race 1 and in race 2, so it does make a difference to the standings. And of course, this actually is a track that, although there are overtaking opportunities, we can see one coming up here right down that incredibly long start-finish straight, 1,047 meters long. So if you get this right, there's a huge amount of opportunity going into turn 1. But ultimately, it's not the easiest of tracks to overtake at. Track position in qualifying really is going to mean a lot.
Yeah, it really will. No DRS system available on these cars, it must be said as well. So in the DRS zones, they will not have that system activated. We have seen towing races, though, through with the various cars towing behind each other. Was that a little bit of debris that came off Alcabasi's Red Bull liveried machine there? I think it could well have been through the exit, Hamda Alcabasi through the exit of turn 9. But looks to be going reasonably well so far. Purple middle sector, which denotes the fastest of any driver in the session. So this could well be a chart-topping lap. The benchmark at the moment, as you can see, Abby Pulling on a 42.5, and the driver who was closest, so close, you couldn't discern the times in free practice, Bianca Bustamante, just down the road from her in second. Let's see what Alcabasi can do as she comes across the line, and it will be enough for P1 at 42.4.
Yeah, and actually both the Alcabasi sisters for the MP team, but in the Red Bull colours, have done well here in the past. Amna Alcabasi has taken a win, and Hamda Alcabasi has stood on the 2nd step of the podium. So there we have Chloe Chambers, who has just moved to the top of the timings, but I'm sure the times are going to change quite a lot over the next 21 minutes, that's for sure. I'm not quite sure how much we can read into it at this stage.
Monumentally close throughout practice. Chloe Chambers, the driver who's been on the podium once throughout this year, 3rd place in the first race back in Miami, jumping up to the front of the field. Alice Powell there watches on, as ever, connected with the Alpine Academy, connected with the development of Abby Pulling, and she'll be looking to see her performance as she makes her way through the session. Purple sector, though, Nikki, for Dorian Pan at this stage.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what Dorian Pan can do here today, because she is recovering from an injury. She fell off her bike. She had a bike accident a few weeks ago. She had to pull out of Le Mans. It was not what she wanted to happen. She's been recovering. She broke a rib. There's not a huge amount you can do to help that recover faster, but she's doing what she can. This will be the first time this weekend that she stepped back in the car. She struggled a little bit in practice earlier today, finishing down in P10, but this is going to be everything. So she's gone quickest in sector 1, she's done a PB in sector 2, and there she's done it straight to the top. P1 at the moment with a 1 minute 50:41.98.
A monstrous lap then, a monstrous final sector for Pan, who really pulls it out of the bag there. 2/10 clear of Chambers and Hamda Alcabasi, very close through the top 10. Leah Block jumping up to 7th place at this stage, but let's see what Abby Pulling has to say about that. 5th place at the moment. Can she turn it into the provisional pole position? No, she can't. A difficult final sector then from Pulling. Drivers, though, Nikki, finding lap after lap here, despite the abrasive nature of this circuit.
Yeah, and also, of course, they're out with a new set of tyres for this session. Over the course of the weekend, they get 3.5 sets. There is no pit stops during the races, so if you do see them go into the pits at any point, then there's obviously going to be an issue there. That's during the course of the race. So here we are now with Carrie Schreiner. She's just set her personal best in Sector 2. See if she can improve from P12. I know she's been really working hard at her qualifying performance, putting in a lot of practice during on the simulator since her last race in Miami, which was 2 months ago. So it's really quite a long time ago since the girls were in these cars. She hasn't improved on that time and stays in P12.
Nerea Marti improving though in the first sector as you follow her through camps up turn 9. And what is a relatively long run down towards turn 10 in one of these machines, takes it over to the right-hand side of the racetrack, braking around 100 metres, then you tend to charge in over that inside curve, and these F1 Academy drivers taking a lot of that inside curve to try to shorten the distance down towards the apex of 12. Good lap from Marty, another good lap underway as well from Chambers in the Haas liveried machine. Marty sitting 6th in the championship, best position of 3rd so far this year, and this could be a qualifying performance that puts her in the hunt to improve that. Across the line from Marty, who's having a strong weekend at home, only up to 4th after a slightly difficult final sector. Chambers, though, finding a lap in the Haas machine for P1 at this stage, eclipsing Dorian Pam by less than 1/10 of a second at the front.
Absolutely fantastic result there for Chloe Chambers. She's had a great bit of momentum, actually. She's had a podium finish in Miami and 2 4th-place finishes. So it'll be interesting to see what she can do here in Barcelona. And there's a replay of Bianca Bustamante as well, going down the start-finish straight. But we're now on board, or looking at Leah Block in the Williams, who, again, has had well, it's been an interesting start for her in her first full season in a single-seater. Obviously, she stepped across from rallying without a huge amount of experience in this kind of category, but she's really, really determined. She did take her last point out in Miami, which was great for her and the team. But, you know, I think given some of the performance that we've seen on track, that maybe doesn't correlate to her position P14 in the standings at the moment.
Well, ran in a podium position, of course, in her very early races in the series before having a bit of a spin back in Jeddah. She's shown clear pace and has said as much herself. She said before this weekend, I need to be getting further up the field with the amount of speed that I'm able to show. Is she going to be able to do that throughout this qualifying session? Deciding to give that one up despite 2 personal best sectors and arc into the pit lane for another set of tyres, perhaps, to run the second half of this session. 16 minutes available still on the clock, and the track now becoming relatively quiet as drivers come in to look for that second set.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone, of course, we've got 15 drivers in F1 Academy this season. That's broken down, run by 5 teams behind the scenes. You can see the 10 F1 liveried cars and 5 additional sponsored cars. But it is 5 teams behind the scenes: Rodin, MP, Campos, ART and Prema Racing, who are running the cars.
Great for the F1 Academy drivers. It's the first weekend of the year that they've been on the bill alongside FIA F3. So back in Jeddah, of course, you didn't have it. Miami didn't have it. So they can now go and have a look around the F3 paddock, see what the next stage might be, perhaps connect if they're not indeed racing for directly the team they might look to move through into in that series. Perhaps have a bit of a look and a feel out for how the Formula 3 paddock works and operates as we look at Lola Loven.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to go sniffing around for their new job, don't they? Because, you know, this is a reminder. That's exactly what F1 Academy is for. We are here to obviously nurture talent and ensure that they have a place to go. Now, it's time to hear from one of our drivers.
I broke my wrist, more exactly my thumb in Miami. I had 3 weeks of cast, 2 weeks of kinesiotherapist, a lot of things to recover as fast as possible. But my wrist is fine, fully recovered. I had medical check this morning, and I have the green light, so we go.
Yeah, we've had a few injuries in F1 Academy since the last race, but it's good to see they are all fighting fit and raring to go again. So Loven Voss back in the car, which is always good to see. So that's Hamda Al-Khabazi there in the Red Bull Racing car. The number 8 on the front at the moment, currently sitting in P3. Hamda raced in F1 Academy last season as well. She had 4 wins and 2 pole positions, so she's a really strong performer in this series. Currently sitting 7th in the championship at the moment.
Set her sights on the top 3 at the beginning of the year. Said, I'm coming back to the Formula. I want to finish in the top 3, driving for MP Motorsport. And several years in karting for her before moving through to this level and into single-seaters. 4th place in F4 UAE for her as well. And very much the time to shine on the big platform for Hamda Al-Khabazi in the Red Bull liveried machine. We've got Bianca Bustamante back out on track, the McLaren connected driver, and has not been quite as on it throughout the early part of this session as she was during free practice. Another set of tyres available to all drivers to try and build into another opportunity to set a fast time. You see them heading in and out here. Sometimes that's to put the cars on fuel. Sometimes that's to roll a set of tyres in where they go in and out during the qualifying process, because they feel like it will change the characteristics of the surface temperature of the tyre when they run through the races for tyres that they might use later on in the pit lane. Later on in the race weekend, I should say. Speeding in the pit lane, Nerea Marti. I was 1 sentence ahead of myself.
Also, I love the fact that you can tell when they're new tyres, because they've still got the little white label on.
That's why they call them stickers.
Yeah. It's not so easy on the eye watching them, is it? But it is a good reminder of who's going out on a fresh set of tyres.
Fun fact for you, I had an Australian engineer in GT racing. He used to call new tyres greens. Because they were brought over, they were often imported after a long boat ride back in the early days of his racing, and they were green by the time they got there. So chuck a set of greens on it used to be.
And how much grip did you get from that?
I think they took a few laps to come in, but after that they were all right.
Brilliant. Well, I doubt we're going to be getting that many of those in this series this weekend, that's for sure. So it is Chloe Chambers currently at the top of this session in P1, with Dorian Pat not far off, just behind in P2. Al-Khabazi, Marti pulling Bustamante, Hausmann, Block, Dahush, and Maya Vug in P10 at the moment. But let's see what Tina Hausmann can do. So she is in the Aston Martin liveried car. Again, Tina Hausmann said that this was her race. She's really focused. She's put in, again, a lot of practice and feels that maybe things weren't coming together in the first couple of race weekends, but is feeling confident. As I mentioned earlier, she said this was one of her favourite tracks. So let's see if she can get a little bit of extra performance during this lap, but she's now coming into the pit lane.
Yeah, rolling the tyre in and then coming back into the pit lane. Remember, they've got a half a set more to use if they want. So they've used 1 set in through practice, another set in the early part of qualifying, then thrown another set on now. So they've got a half a set to play with if they like. Lots of tyre tomfoolery going on at this stage as they try to manage the tyres to best effect, get the cars on fuel, and then it's all about the final stage of qualifying. Why? Because the track and air temperature are going to be falling throughout qualifying, and it's going to improve the performance of the car a lot the later you run. There will be a team fine for Marti speeding in the pit lane. I've never seen that over the race control specific indication of a team fine. I've never seen that over the race control news system in my life.
Well, now you have.
Now I have.
You can
new experiences.
Wow, was that good for you? Well, I'm glad we're bringing new experiences in F1 Academy for you, Alex.
That's what it's all about.
But it's a good point about the weather, because yes, we are blessed with sunshine today and sunshine again tomorrow. However, Sunday morning. The rain in Spain may not fall mainly on the plane. It is coming for us, so we could end up seeing a wet race on Sunday, which will really keep things alive, that's for sure. I kind of hope it does rain.
It'll fall mainly on the main straight. It could well have a little bit of weather. It's tough round here. Tough round here in the rain. The wet tyre goes off very, very quickly. And you really have to find that wet line because there's so much rubber. This is a very well-used circuit. They test here flat out. So you really have to find that wet line here in rainy conditions. But drivers just managing the car then for their last go at it here.
So talking about tyre management, because again, the drivers were saying after the practice session just how critical it's going to be during the course of the race to manage those tyres, but also obviously find the edge of pushing hard and getting the maximum performance. I mean, that is something that they're going to really have to fine-tune over the course of this weekend and really learn, because it's a skill that takes, you know, a huge amount of experience to get right.
I mean, we saw through those final couple of corners a lot of mistakes from various drivers. I think it was Hausmann who was really struggling with the rear of her car. And it's a factor here more than anywhere else these drivers will visit. Maybe similar in Zandvoort, although the circuit surface doesn't quite have the energy characteristics that it does here in Barcelona. But yeah, they're really feeling the cars move around. It's going to be a factor through the races. There are going to be errors here associated to that. And then keeping the tyre under control when you're trying to deliver your qualifying lap is tricky too. Although they do seem to be able to do lap after lap here. Such is the rigidity and resilience of the compound of tyre that they're on. So I think it's a factor, definitely. A nice, gentle opening for these drivers into the world of managing tyres without the massive risk for them of potentially losing qualifying laps and races to falling off a huge cliff with the rear end.
So now we are on board with Nerea Marti, the Tommy Hilfiger driver. Very much an intuitive driver. I think she's sort of less data-driven than perhaps some of her teammates are. So it's not quickest there in Sector 1. Didn't improve on her time there, but she's currently P4 at the moment. But let's see what she can do in the second sector and improve on her time in this lap. Bustamante there has gone personal best in Sector 1. So keep an eye on that time. Bustamante, I think, was feeling particularly strong coming into this race weekend. Really, thanks to the support of her team, done a lot of work in the simulator, felt very confident and said she just wanted to go out and enjoy this race weekend. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, isn't it? If you can get yourself into a place where you're relaxed, you can go out and enjoy it, the results will follow. So she says, having never raced.
So we've got Bustamante with a fast first sector. Leah Block, fastest of all through the first sector of the lap. Bustamante slightly down. These are the moments now then. These are the last few laps. Jessica Edgar popping up in the American Express connected entry up into 5th place. But let's see how this rest of this lap go for Marti, Bustamante and Block now through to the end of the lap, because it really is the time when they're going to start bringing the performance.
Absolutely. So Marti currently in P4. She remains in P4. Didn't improve. Bustamante, quickest of the session in P1. But let's take a look at what Leah Block can do. She went quickest, well, PB in Sector 1, hasn't improved in Sector 2. So it is an improvement overall. She'll be really happy with that, up to P4.
Both Edgar and Pulling now improving. Purple first sector for Abby Pulling at this stage. It's another 2 green sectors for the house as well. So she's really improving through the final stages. Now we join Abby Pulling. She makes her way through turn 9 and off down the back straight. Let's see how this middle sector works out.
Really good sector 2 and 3 on that lap. Jess, keep pushing. You found 2 tenths. Come on.
So good words of encouragement there for Jess Edgar. She's in the American Express liveried car. Let's see what she can do. Abby Pulling there has just gone purple in Sector 2. Can she beat Bustamante? Bustamante matched her on time in the practice session. Can she improve on Bustamante's time? Abby Pulling currently in P8.
Super close at the front of the field. Bustamante by a tiny margin from Chambers. Can Pulling find the P1 lap? 3 tenths more than 3 tenths of a second clear at this stage as the track continues to improve. Let's see what Edgar's got across the line.
So she moves up from P8 up to P6. So she managed to find a few extra tenths there as well. Nuria Marti currently in P8. Can she improve? She's looking good in Sector 1 and Sector 2, but can she improve on her time in P8 at the moment? Let's find out.
Now 4 tenths in each sector, 4 tenths.
Wow.
Marti.
That was a phenomenal Sector 3. Marti moves up into P1, quickest of the qualifying session.
Marti quickest, but the track really is improving. Dorian Pain slightly better in the final sector, and as the sun begins to fade and the track begins to cool, these drivers are finding massive amounts of time. Pain improving, Chambers improving. It's only up to third for Pain, but Chambers hits the front.
This is an absolutely phenomenal qualifying session. I'm loving it. But all eyes now are on Abby Pulling. She's had 2 pole positions in the last 2 races. Can she make it a hat-trick of pole positions? It's looking good. She's just gone purple in Sector 1, purple in Sector 2. The competition are going to be keeping an eye on her time. She could be the driver to beat here in qualifying.
It's only marginal though, only a marginal improvement in both sectors. 1.5 tenths clear for Abby Pulling. This lap will need to be really tidy through that final sector. The tyre starting potentially to go away from a few drivers now. This could be the moment though for Pulling.
Okay, let's see what she does as she crosses the line. She's moved up P1. Well, it is incredibly close. Less than a tenth between her and Chloe Chambers.
3 times a race winner, championship leader Abby Pulling hits the front with 3 minutes to go in qualifying. Houseman slightly down with 2 green sectors, but it looks like this is going to be a decent qualifying effort from her. They're still finding time in the first sector. Almost every driver in the midfield is the same to the 10th through that early sector of the lap. Can Houseman get herself up into the top 10? Of course, several laps required in a row to generate the first and second fastest time. What's it going to be for Houseman? Only up to 6th at this stage. She will get a couple more laps to run.
But that's a fantastic. That would be her best starting position. Houseman, her best finish, her best start so far is P7. So that she will be very happy with. Dorian Pain remains in P4. Lola Lovenfoss also, well, currently in P10. Let's see what she can do as she enters into that final Sector 3.
Several drivers now not improving through that final sector of the lap, and you can see Lovenfoss crank the steering lock on there as she slides across the road and struggles. Has improved in the first sector, has improved in the second sector, but is she going to be able to maintain the improvement with the difficulties of balance through the final corner?
Well, let's take a look what Lola Lovenfoss can do in the Charlotte Tilbury car. She remains in P10, lost time in that third sector, but there is still just under 2 minutes to go. So we still cannot confirm who's on pole position, but it's provisional pole at the moment for Abby Pulling.
Great lap from Pulling. Couple of purple sectors really delivered across the line. She's got out of it this time around, cooled the tyre down. Several of the drivers still pushing. Alcabasi still pushing. Lovenfoss of the lap we just saw, but it is Hamda Alcabasi who is still on it out there with a slightly better first sector. Let's see if she can make any improvement through the middle sector in the MP car, supported by Red Bull, of course, across the garage from her sister and the house. The only person with a green sector on the board at this point.
Yeah, it's you just mentioned there Emily de Hausch, who was on pole position and a race winner here last time. MP Motorsport did extremely well, so perhaps not quite the potential that we're seeing from de Hausch that we have seen from her in the past. But let's keep all eyes on Alcabasi and see what she can do in the Red Bull racing car.
Marginal improvement from Dorian Pain, 3 tenths away from the pace at the front of the field, but she's unable to improve past 4th position. Alcabasi comes across the line, no improvement again. They're running out of time to beat Abby Pulling, and I suspect that it will be the Alpine Academy driver's day, and she will be taking pole position for the race.
Oh, you've already called it. Well, I'm going to keep an eye on Dorian Pain and see where she is on the track, because you never know, there might be that final last lap dash. But at the moment, it is Abby Pulling fastest overall with a 1 minute 41.396.
Taking the flag then. And this will be the last run across the line for Pulling. She is going to finish off the session. She's not improved in any of the sectors this time around. I don't see I don't see, Nikki, anybody making an improvement. I do think it will be Abby Pudding who takes the P1 spot for the first race at least. Of course, the second fastest lap so often it is the difficult one to work out, who will give you the grid position for that second race. But at least in terms of the peak lap time, Pudding's day for me.
And Chloe Chambers there, P2. I mean, what a result for her. Her best qualifying so far has been 6th this season. She'll be starting from the front row of the grid. A huge moment for her and the team.
Certainly is. Marty making her way back into the pit lane. A home event, a great performance for the Tommy Hilfiger connected driver, Spanish driver, of course, and will be delighted to be starting in 3rd position for her home event. So let's see what's going on with Edgar, who's made her way wide through the exit gravel in turn 12. So a little bit of a wild ride in the traction zone of turn 12, but no harm done. She will finish the session just inside the top 10 in 9th.
So here we are, a replay with, or maybe it's not a replay, it's just Abby Pulling waving it to the crowd. Unbelievable, a hat trick of pole positions for the Alpine driver this season. Let's hear from her now.
That was a nail biter moment. Thank you for the chase, thanks so much. Yes!
Well, celebrations well deserved for Abby Pulling and the Alpine team. A very big moment. Her team rode in just 2 points ahead at the moment in the standings, so it's really, really tight at the top. And actually, we do need to find out who's going to be on pole position for the second race, which we will find out soon. We just need to get the times for the second race, which is, of course, the second fastest lap time of the session.
Yeah. Keep your eyes across the socials for that one. We don't have facility to dish out that time immediately, but they will be expressed, of course, in the official results. What we do know is the fastest time throughout qualifying was delivered by Abby Pulling, and classification at the end of the session will give you both sets of results, so we should be able to see at the end, when we get the full page graphic, which driver will be on pole position for the second race of the weekend. Both races, of course, 30 minutes long, no pit stops, a flat-out dash from lights to flag.
Well, what a result there for Abby Pulling. She managed to unleash the untapped performance of the car and put in a phenomenal performance during that qualifying session. She'll be absolutely delighted. But of course, the question is, what will happen during the course of the 30-minute, well, the race that will be taking place tomorrow at 6 p.m. I think it's 6 p.m. local time, so they've got a full day of on-track action to watch to prepare themselves ahead of tomorrow evening's race. So now we can find out how the grid is going to line up on both Saturday and Sunday. So fastest time for race 1, it's Abby Pulling on pole position with Chloe Chambers, the first time she'll be starting on the front row, and Nerea Marti, also a huge improvement for her in P3. Dorian Pan will be starting from the second row in 4th. Bianca Bustamante, despite that great start in practice, manages to start in P5. Tina Hausman in 6th, Hamna Alcobazi 7th, Leah Block 8th. Great qualifying result for her. Jess Edgar 9th and Lola Lovenfoss in P10. No improvements from Emily de Hausch. Maya Vug unusually down in P12. Amna Alcobazi 13th, Carrie Schreiner in 14th and Aurelia Nobles in 15th. So now let's find out the second fastest time. It is Abby Pulling. Unbelievable. That's 4 pole positions for Abby Pulling this season. Chloe Chambers once again starting on the front row, but it will be Dorian Pan just behind in P3. Dorian Pan there, you can see 2.5 tenths off Abby Pulling's pole position time. Nerea Marti P4, Hamna Alcobazi 5th, Leah Block, Tina Hausman, Bianca Bustamante dropped down a bit for P8, Jess Edgar 9th and Lola Lovenfoss remains in P10. Emily De Hausch, Carrie Schreiner, Maya Vug, Aurelia Nobles and Amna Al-Qubaisi close out the top 15. So a very similar looking grid from race 1 and race 2. But the question is, we've seen it before. Abby Pulling has done a lights to flag victory, not once, but twice. Can she do it again? Join us tomorrow, local time, 6 p.m, as we go racing in Barcelona. We'll see you then.